Imagine walking barefoot across a frozen landscape. Every step sends a sharp sting through your feet. Jagged rocks slice the skin beneath your toes. The ground ahead is littered with thorns, burning sand, and hidden dangers you can't see until it's too late. Now imagine this isn't a bad dream. This is just Tuesday. Today, putting on shoes is one of the first things most of us do before stepping outside. Takes seconds. We barely think about it. But there was a time when shoes didn't exist. Not for anyone, anywhere. For hundreds of thousands of years, every human being who ever lived, every hunter, every mother, every child running across open plains, did it all on bare feet. So what changed? Was it pain that finally pushed our ancestors to act? Was it desperation? Or was it something far more surprising? The answer reaches deeper than comfort. It's a story of survival against impossible odds, of migration into lands that had no mercy, and of human beings refusing to be stopped by the world beneath their feet. This is the hidden origin of shoes. And trust me, by the end of this series you'll never look at your feet the same way again. Long before cities, long before roads, long before anyone ever planted a single seed in the ground, there were people. And they walked. Every single day they walked. Through dense forests where the undergrowth cut and tangled around their ankles. Across rocky hillsides where a single misplaced step could mean a twisted ankle, a broken bone, or worse. Over open plains stretching so far in every direction that the horizon felt like a wall closing in from all sides. And they did all of it barefoot. But here's what most people don't realize. Their feet weren't like yours. Not even close. Walking barefoot from the very first steps of childhood did something to the human body that we've almost entirely lost today. The skin on the soles thickened into something closer to leather than flesh. The muscles deep inside the foot, muscles that most modern humans never even activate, grew powerful enough to grip uneven ground the way your hands grip a railing. The arches flexed and absorbed impact in ways that even the most advanced running shoes today are still trying to imitate. These early humans weren't suffering through their barefoot lives. They were built for them. In the warm regions of Africa, where the human story first began, the earth was often generous. Sun-baked soil, soft grass, ground that gave back to the foot rather than fighting it. For generation after generation, spanning thousands upon thousands of years, bare feet were simply enough. There was no problem to solve, no invention needed. Life was hard in every other imaginable way. Predators, drought, disease, the constant, grinding uncertainty of not knowing where the next meal would come from. But the ground beneath their feet? That, at least, they had handled. And then something shifted. It started slowly, the way the most world-changing things always do. Small groups began moving, drifting north and east, following herds, following water, following a restless pull toward the unknown that seems to be written somewhere deep in human nature. They were explorers long before exploration had a name. At first, the changes were subtle. The trees looked different. The animals were unfamiliar. The nights grew longer, and the air held a chill that the body had never quite learned to prepare for. But they kept moving. And then one season, something happened that no amount of thick skin or powerful muscle could have prepared them for. The ground changed. Not just the texture of it. Not just the temperature. The entire character of the earth beneath their feet transformed into something alien and merciless. Frost crept into the soil before sunrise and didn't leave until midday, if it left at all. Sharp stones, once manageable, now carried a cold that burned on contact. Snow packed into hidden crevices, disguising edges and drops and dangers that could end a life in a single careless moment. And the ice was something else entirely. Step onto it wrong and the ground simply disappeared from under you. Stand on it too long and the cold moved through the skin, into the muscle, into the bone. A slow, numbing invasion that the body had no answer for. These were not the forgiving plains of home. This was a world that had no interest in accommodating the human foot. And yet, they didn't turn back. That's the part that stops you cold when you really think about it. Faced with terrain that was actively hostile, with temperatures that could cripple a person within minutes, these early humans looked at the frozen world ahead of them and kept walking forward anyway. But survival has a way of forcing creativity. When the body reaches its limit, the mind steps in. And somewhere in the middle of an ice age, in a moment we will never be able to pinpoint on any map or timeline, a human being looked down at their raw, cracked, bleeding feet and had an idea. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't engineered. It wasn't anything that would turn heads today, but it was the moment that changed everything. The question is, what exactly did they do? And perhaps more importantly, how did that single desperate act of survival eventually travel across 10,000 years of human history to become something that now shapes fashion empires, billion-dollar industries, and the way the entire world signals power, identity, and status? Because the story of shoes isn't just about keeping feet warm. It never was. Picture this. You wake up before sunrise in a landscape that feels nothing like home. The air hits your face like a blade. Your breath turns to vapor the moment it leaves your lips. The ground beneath you is iron hard, locked solid by a cold so deep it feels personal. Like the earth itself has decided it no longer wants you here. And you still have to hunt today. Because if you don't hunt, you don't eat. And if you don't eat, neither does anyone else waiting back at camp. Not the children, not the elders, not the people depending on you to come back with something. So you stand up. You take a step forward. And the frozen ground opens up every crack in the skin of your feet like a knife finding old wounds. This was the reality that greeted our ancestors as they pushed deeper into Europe and Northern Asia. Not an adventure. Not a discovery. A daily confrontation with an environment that was actively, relentlessly trying to kill them. Winter temperatures plummeted to depths the human body was never designed to endure barefoot. And cold at that level doesn't just sting, it lies. It starts as pain, sharp and screaming, demanding attention. But leave it long enough and the pain disappears, replaced by a dangerous, deceptive numbness that whispers that everything is fine. Everything was not fine. Ice was everywhere and it was patient. It hid beneath thin layers of snow, waiting. One wrong step and a foot would break through, submerging into water cold enough to begin shutting down the body's functions within minutes. The clock would start ticking immediately, not toward discomfort but toward something far worse. And the rocks beneath the snow were their own kind of threat. Jagged, frozen edges that sliced through skin already made brittle by the cold. Ground that cracked the heels open with every mile walked. Surfaces that turned a routine morning hunt into an exercise in quiet suffering. But here is where the story stops being just about pain and starts being about something much more terrifying. A cut on a warm, clean surface is an inconvenience. A cut in these conditions was a countdown. Infection moved fast in bodies already stretched to their limits by cold and hunger and exhaustion. A small wound on the foot, left untreated in freezing, unclean conditions, could swell and redden and burn within days. And once infection took hold, it didn't stay politely in one place. Spread. It deepened. It turned a minor injury into something that could take a grown adult off their feet entirely. And here's the brutal arithmetic of survival that these people understood better than anything else. A hunter who cannot walk cannot hunt. A hunter who cannot hunt becomes a burden. And in a world operating on the thinnest possible margins, where every calorie had to be earned and every member of the group had to contribute, becoming a burden was not a small thing. Could mean being left behind. Could mean the end. Suddenly, the stakes of an unprotected foot were not about comfort or preference. They were existential. The difference between a protected foot and an unprotected one was, in the most literal possible sense, the difference between life and death. Something had to change. And somewhere in this frozen, unforgiving world, someone figured it out. Not an inventor working in a workshop. Not a craftsman with tools and time and the luxury of experimentation. Just a person, cold, desperate, running out of options, who looked at the world around them and grabbed whatever they could find. What they created was crude, barely recognizable as footwear by any standard we would use today. But it worked. And what happened next? How that first desperate solution was refined, reimagined, and eventually carried across continents and through centuries until it became something unrecognizable from its origins, is the part of this story that nobody ever talks about. Because the first shoes weren't just objects. They were a turning point in human history. And the moment they appeared, nothing would ever be quite the same again. No one remembers their name. There is no monument built for them. No historical record, no carved inscription, no oral legend passed down through generations that begins with the words, "This is the person who first covered their feet." And yet, what they did quietly, without ceremony, in the middle of an ice age that most of us will never fully comprehend, changed the human story forever. We don't know if it was a man or a woman. We don't know if they were young or old. whether they acted out of sudden inspiration or slow, grinding necessity. We don't know if anyone around them understood, in that moment, that something significant had just happened. What we do know is this: they looked at the world around them and they improvised. The first shoes were not shoes in any way we would recognize today. No stitching, no sole, no carefully measured fit, almost certainly no left or right. Just material, whatever was close, whatever was available, whatever could be wrapped around a foot and held in place long enough to make a difference. Animal hide still warm from the hunt, bark stripped from a nearby tree, grass twisted and woven tight enough to create a layer, however thin, between skin and frozen earth. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't engineered. It was desperate and practical and completely human in the most fundamental way possible. Imagine an Ice Age hunter crouching at the edge of camp before dawn, wrapping soft hide around each foot with cold, stiff fingers, pressing the material tight against the skin, knowing that what lay ahead required every possible advantage the body could be given. Not for fashion, not for status, just to make it through the day. That crude wrapping trapped warmth against the skin. It blunted the edge of frozen rocks. It created just enough separation between a vulnerable human foot and an environment designed to destroy it. And in doing so, it made something possible that had been impossible the day before. Longer journeys, deeper into harsher terrain, through conditions that would have stopped an unprotected person in their tracks. It was a small thing that made everything larger. But here's what makes this story even more extraordinary. Almost none of it survived. Organic material, hide, bark, grass, fiber, doesn't last tens of thousands of years under normal conditions. It rots. It disintegrates. It disappears back into the earth as if it was never there. Which means the physical evidence of humanity's first great footwear revolution is almost entirely gone, swallowed by time. So how do we know it happened at all? The answer is written in bone. Scientists studying ancient human skeletons made a quiet, remarkable discovery. Around 40,000 years ago, something changed in the smaller bones of the human toe. These delicate bones, the ones that, in a barefoot life, work constantly to grip and stabilize and respond to uneven ground, began to show signs of reduced stress. Reduced use. They were getting weaker. Not because humans were getting weaker, but because something else had taken over the job. The feet were no longer gripping the earth alone. Something between the skin and the ground was doing part of the work. And the bones, responding to that change the way the human body always responds to change, slowly began to reflect a new reality. Shoes had begun reshaping the human skeleton. Think about that for a moment. An invention so significant that it didn't just change how people moved through the world, it changed the physical structure of the human body itself. A ripple that is still visible today, 40,000 years later, in the bones of every person alive. From a desperate wrapping of animal hide to a force that rewrote human anatomy. That is what the first shoes actually were. But survival was only the beginning. Because once humans discovered that covering their feet changed what was possible, once that idea was loose in the world, it didn't stay simple for long. What happened when entire civilizations got hold of it? What did shoes become when survival was no longer the only thing at stake? And how did something born in desperation become one of the most powerful symbols of human culture, wealth, and identity the world has ever seen? Something happened when humanity stopped running from the cold. When the desperate scramble for daily survival began slowly, incrementally, to ease. When people started building, settling, organizing themselves into something larger than a hunting group huddled around a fire. When the first cities rose from the earth and the first rulers sat on the first thrones and looked out over the first crowds of people who owed them something. Shoes were there for all of it. And they were changing in ways that no Ice Age hunter wrapping hide around frozen feet could ever have imagined. In ancient Egypt, the ground was no longer the enemy. It was the sun. The desert sand could reach temperatures hot enough to blister skin in minutes. So the Egyptians engineered their answer with what they had. Papyrus reeds woven into flat, lightweight sandals that lifted the foot just enough to survive the midday heat. Simple in design but radical in what they represented. Because in Egypt, not everyone wore them. That detail matters more than it might seem. In a world where shoes had once been purely about survival, where anyone who needed them made them, suddenly footwear became something else entirely. A statement. A declaration. Pharaohs wore sandals adorned with gold and intricate decoration, carried by servants when they weren't being worn. Noblemen displayed their status through the quality of their footwear. And the poor, the laborers, the farmers, the vast majority of people who built and sustained that glittering civilization went barefoot. The shoe had become a language. And it was saying loudly, clearly, unmistakably, I am above you. Across the Mediterranean, Rome took that language and turned it into a military doctrine. Roman soldiers marched. That was, in many ways, the entire secret of the empire. Not just the fighting, the marching. Thousands of miles of it across mountains, through forests, over terrain that would have broken armies less prepared. And underneath every one of those miles were the caligae, thick-soled leather boots studded with hobnails on the bottom, engineered for grip, for durability, for the punishment of endless roads. The Roman army conquered much of the known world on foot, and the foot was armored. When a Roman general stood before a defeated enemy, the boots he wore weren't just protection. They were a symbol of the machine that had just rolled over everything the enemy had built. The shoe had become an instrument of power so profound that it echoed across centuries. And Rome was just one story. Across China, platform shoes elevated noble women, literally, above the common ground, making it physically impossible to perform manual labor and broadcasting status with every impossible step. In the courts of medieval Europe, the nobility wore polaines, shoes with pointed toes so absurdly long they sometimes had to be chained to the knee to allow walking, a deliberate, extravagant declaration that the wearer did absolutely nothing practical with their day. In the Americas, indigenous cultures crafted moccasins with such precision that the construction technique varied not just by tribe but by terrain. Specific designs for woodland, for plains, for mountain. Identity encoded in stitching. Heritage carried on the sole. In Africa, footwear marked ceremony, rank, and passage. Shoes worn not just to protect but to proclaim. To announce to the world who you were, where you stood, what you had earned. Everywhere. Every culture. Every civilization that rose from the earth. Shoes were there. And they were doing something far beyond keeping feet safe. They were telling stories. They were enforcing hierarchies. They were marking the line between the powerful and the powerless, between the sacred and the ordinary, between those who mattered and those who were expected to stay invisible. A piece of material wrapped around a foot had become one of the most loaded symbols in all of human culture. And then came the moment that tore all of that meaning wide open. The moment when the machine arrived. When factories began producing in a single day what once took a craftsman an entire week. When the symbol of status suddenly became available to almost everyone. What happens to power when the thing that represents it can be mass-produced? What happens to identity when everyone can afford the same shoes? For thousands of years, a shoe began the same way. With hands. A craftsman, a cordwainer, a cobbler, a maker of sawls, would sit in a small workshop, surrounded by the smell of leather and the quiet focus of someone doing work that demanded everything from them. They would cut. They would stitch. They would shape and fit and test and refine. A single pair of shoes could take days, weeks for something elaborate. And when it was done, that pair of shoes carried something invisible but real, the hours of a human life, pressed into every seam. For most of history, that process meant one unavoidable thing. Shoes cost. They cost time, and time cost money. And money was something that most people on Earth had very little of. A good pair of leather shoes for a working family wasn't a weekend purchase. It was a significant event. Something saved for. Something repaired and resold and passed down until there was nothing left to repair. Children in vast parts of the world went barefoot not by choice, but because the alternative simply wasn't within reach. And then, in the mid-19th century, the world cracked open. The Industrial Revolution didn't arrive quietly. It arrived with smoke and noise and the thunder of machinery that made the ground shake and the air taste of iron. It rewired cities, reshuffled economies, and pulled millions of people from agricultural life into the grinding, relentless rhythm of factory work. And it came for shoes. In 1858, a man named Lyman Blake patented a machine that could sew the sole of a shoe to its upper in a fraction of the time it took human hands. It sounds small. It was enormous. Within years, the invention had been refined and scaled, absorbed into factories that hummed and clattered through 16-hour days, producing shoes by the hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands. What had taken a craftsman a week now took a machine minutes. The price of shoes collapsed. Availability exploded. Suddenly, durable, wearable footwear wasn't the preserve of the merchant class or the nobility or the family that had saved for 6 months. It moved rapidly, almost violently, into the hands of ordinary people. Factory workers, farmers, children who had spent their entire lives feeling the earth directly beneath their feet now had something between them and the ground. For the first time in human history, the majority of people could afford to be protected. It was, in its own quiet way, a revolution inside the revolution. But here is where it gets complicated. Because when you remove scarcity from something that has carried status for thousands of years, when the symbol of power becomes available to almost everyone, the people who once used that symbol to separate themselves don't simply accept the new reality. They adapt. The wealthy didn't abandon shoes as a status marker when machines made them affordable. They escalated. They moved into exclusivity, rarer materials, more intricate designs, shoes made in limited quantities by the last remaining craftsmen who still worked entirely by hand. The price didn't drop for everyone. For those determined to stay above the crowd, it went up. And the factories kept producing. And the brands began to form. And marketing arrived, the art of convincing people that the shoes on their feet said something about who they were, not just where they were going. The modern shoe industry wasn't just born in those factories. It was engineered, deliberately, strategically, and with a very clear understanding of something that had been true since the sandaled feet of Egyptian pharaohs, that human beings don't just buy shoes for their feet. They buy them for what shoes make them feel like. And no one understood that better than the industry that was about to emerge from the wreckage of the old world. Because what came next wasn't just about production or profit or the mechanics of manufacturing. It was about identity at a scale that no civilization in history had ever attempted before. It was about what happens when a shoe stops being an object and becomes a culture. Look down at your feet for a moment. Really look. Whatever is on them right now. Whether it's a worn-out pair of sneakers, polished dress shoes, or something you grabbed by the door without thinking, carries more history than most people will ever stop to consider. Because the shoe you're wearing today is not just footwear. It is the final destination of a journey that began in the middle of an ice age, in the hands of someone whose name we will never know, who wrapped animal hide around frozen feet, and changed the course of human history without knowing they had done it. And somehow it has become this. Today, shoes are laboratories. The most advanced running shoes on Earth are engineered with materials that didn't exist a decade ago. Foams that return energy with every stride, carbon fiber plates that propel athletes forward with mechanical precision. Designs built not just by cobblers but by physicists and biomechanical engineers running thousands of hours of data analysis on how the human foot moves at maximum speed. World records have been broken not just by athletes, but by the technology wrapped around their feet. Shoes today are safety systems. In construction sites, in chemical plants, in hospital corridors, in kitchens running at full capacity, the right footwear is the difference between a person going home at the end of their shift and a person not going home at all. Steel-toed boots. Anti-slip soles. Pressure-distributing insoles designed by medical professionals to prevent the kind of chronic injury that once ended careers and shortened lives. Shoes today are medicine. Podiatrists and orthopedic surgeons prescribe footwear with the same seriousness they prescribe medication, understanding that the architecture of what sits beneath the foot can correct posture, relieve spinal pressure, prevent the cascade of physical damage that begins at ground level and travels silently upward through the entire body. And shoes today are art. Fashion designers spend years, sometimes entire careers, obsessing over a single silhouette, over the precise angle of a heel, the weight of a sole, the way light catches a particular material. Shoes have walked runways in Paris and New York that stopped entire rooms. They have sold at auction for sums that would have seemed hallucinatory to the Ice Age hunter who started all of this. People collect them, worship them, camp outside stores overnight to own a specific pair in a specific colorway released in limited quantities purely to maintain the illusion of scarcity that the Industrial Revolution once tried to destroy. The shoe has come so far from where it began that the distance is almost incomprehensible. And yet the thread connecting all of it, from frozen hide wrapped around a desperate foot to a carbon-plated marathon shoe crossing a finish line, is unbroken. It is the same thread that has always run through every great human invention. The refusal to accept limitation. The instinct to look at a hostile world and ask, what if I change this? The quiet, relentless creativity of a species that has never been content to simply endure. Shoes tell the story of human adaptation more completely, more honestly, and more intimately than almost anything else we have ever made. Because we wear them against our skin, we carry them through every significant moment of our lives. And the question that remains, the one that should keep you up at night if you think about it long enough, is this. In 1,000 years, what will the shoes on our descendants' feet tell them about who we were? We started this story in the cold. In a world without cities, without roads, without any of the 10,000 things we take for granted every single day. A world where the ground itself was the enemy, and the only thing standing between a human being and a slow, painful end was the stubborn refusal to give up. Someone looked at that world, and they did something about it. That's all it was at the beginning. Not genius, not vision, not the spark of some legendary inventor whose name deserved to be carved in stone. Just a person cold, afraid, running out of options, who reached for whatever was close and decided that today was not the day they would be stopped. And from that single, nameless, unremarkable moment, something extraordinary unraveled across time. It crossed deserts on Egyptian feet. It marched through Europe in Roman boots. It climbed mountains, forded rivers, crossed oceans, and survived every civilization that rose and fell in the thousands of years between that first crude wrapping and the shoes sitting on your feet right now. It carried the weight of empires. It encoded the language of power. It survived the machine age, the marketing age, the age of billion-dollar brands and carbon fiber and athletes who run faster than the human body was ever supposed to move. And it is still going. Every morning, without thinking, you continue a tradition that stretches back further than recorded history, further than agriculture, further than the wheel or writing, or any of the inventions that textbooks tell us changed the world. You reach for your shoes, and you join a line of human beings so long it disappears into the horizon of time itself. The most ordinary gesture, the most extraordinary origin. But here is what should stay with you long after this video ends. The shoe was just the beginning, because the same instinct that drove that nameless Ice Age survivor to wrap hide around their feet, that refusal to accept the world as it was, that insistence on adapting, on solving, on moving forward no matter what the ground beneath them looked like, that instinct didn't stop at footwear. It never stopped. It is the same instinct behind every tool ever made, every medicine ever discovered, every bridge ever built across a river that once seemed impossible to cross. And the question, the one that this entire story has really been building toward, is not where that instinct came from. We know where it came from. Came from survival. It came from cold ground and frozen feet, and the desperate, beautiful creativity of a species that refused to be defeated by the world it was born into. The real question is where it goes next. Because somewhere out there, right now, someone is standing at the edge of something impossible. And they are reaching for whatever is close. And everything is about to change again.